Hello, everybody. Welcome to September. My gosh, that happened quickly, didn't it? I hope everybody's getting settled in, and people with kids in school are getting their feet under them after the summer. Thankfully, I'm past that point. Try to move through my things fairly quickly. Looks like Paul, that kid isn't going to school anytime right away. Um, I'll move
Dave
things.
Kerwar, I just want to say real quick, Dave Kerwar, I think the feedback's coming from your computer because you highlighted green.
Thank you, Jameson. Thank you,
No
Dave.
problem.
I'll get through my stuff fairly quickly and turn this over to the KG&D and ONG teams for their updates, because that's really the primary focus of this evening's meeting. I guess I would start with let's just see if there's a motion to approve the minutes from the August the 24th meeting. Motion from Sarah. I'm sorry,
Hang
stop.
on. One small change. Apparently, I have a total inability to spell Dave Cravanzola's last name correctly. There is one small change. There's not an E in his last name. It is an A. So apologies. We're making that one small change, and I will submit the corrected minutes over to Linda O'Leary. My apologies, Dave Cravanzola.
If only you were the only person that has ever made that.
Yes, well, we'd like to have it correct in the minutes for posterity. So
Right.
please accept my
That's
motion
what I get
to
for pronouncing it like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Please
all
accept
right. Well,
my
then I guess
amended motion.
I guess the motion would have to be for the minutes, assuming that Dave Cravanzola's name is spelled correctly in the amended minutes. Could we get a motion to approve minutes as so amended? Moved by Jameson, seconded by Dave Kerwar. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Is there anybody here in order to make anybody here from the public who wishes to comment? I don't know that I know Gail Archer. Gail, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, sorry, hold on.
These are a rep from Royal, I think, if I have, or
Hi.
Oxford, I can't remember.
Yes, I'm a parent rep from Royal Elementary.
Royal.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I'm sparing you. My kids are running around, so I've been keeping my camera and microphone off.
No worries.
Thank
In terms of the chair's report, really, it's going to be mostly that things continue on track with the design side of things, and we're going to get into a lot more detail on where that stands when I turn it over to Eric. Jill can't make it this evening. She's at an 8th grade parents' night at Middlesex, but she also, just to bring folks up to date, she had met today with the Operations Planning Council, which is representatives of each of the major boards: Board of Education, Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen. Terry Wood was also there. Kate Bush was there, and she gave a very quick high-level update as to sort of where things stand on the design front with our project. And then she's going to do the same on Monday the 19th. There's an RTM meeting, and they called and asked if we could give excuse me, a quick update. And I would have done it, except that I have a client event in the city that evening, but Jill's going to do that on behalf of the committee. That's really it in terms of specific chair report stuff. As noted in the agenda, I did want to let folks know that Randy Giraldo has told me that he's now buttoned up his arrangement to relocate with his family to London for his job. So he's going to be stepping down from the committee. As folks know, Frank Garibaldi has joined the committee, so we're at full strength. But I did want to, for purposes of the public record, say a word of thanks to Randy Giraldo for his help on the committee. He's been really helpful in the time that he's been on the committee. He's also been super instrumental on the Ox Ridge committee. He's helped guide through the town approval process in other areas. So a big note of thanks to Randy and wish him well in his new endeavors overseas. He has said that he would make himself available on an ad hoc basis if we had questions. So I'm sure that we'll take advantage of that. From there, I was going to turn it over to Eric and the KG&D team to give us a design update. And then the other thing we were going to talk about is Dave Cravanzola has prepared a super helpful, super detailed milestone schedule. Now the dates in there may still be moving around, but this is similar to what we have in the binder that we got at the very beginning of the committee's life that was done in connection with the Ox Ridge project, to kind of show the progress and the mission critical dates that have to be achieved. And Dave's going to walk us through that after Eric brings us up to date on design matters. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric.
Thanks, Chris. Everybody can hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting an echo, but I'm sorry. I'm not sure why. Maybe Alan, if you turn yours off, or Chris, you turn yours off.
Yep, I'll mute.
Okay, so, well, hold on a second. I don't know what's going on here.
I think you're connected twice. It shows you as having called in as well as being on the video, so that could be the reason.
Yeah, not sure why, but
Sarah, are you able to? Do you need to be on both, Eric? Is Sarah able to cancel the non-video one out?
I don't know.
I'm not sure I can.
Or mute
Which one are
one
you
of them.
on? Which one would
Yeah,
you
or
like
can
to
you-
use, Eric?
hold on a second.
I have the image of you talking.
The image is the one I want.
Okay, the one let me see if I can remove it.
Or mute it, like Chris said.
Nope, you're
There you
okay.
go.
How's
I
that?
think that worked.
Oh,
Yep,
perfect. Thank you so much. I
no
hate
problem.
listening to myself. Okay, so I was just kind of give an update as to what we've done the last couple of weeks and where we're going for the next 6 weeks. So the big news this week was that our schematic design package was sent to the estimator. So both ONG as well as NASCO Construction received 3 different packages, one for Hindley, one for Holmes, and one for Royal. And it's a full SD set. And they're going to start asking. In fact, they've already started asking questions. I know that they've communicated amongst themselves as well already. And so over the course of the next 2 weeks, they're going to be developing a cost estimate based on the schematic design drawings. We think they're in pretty good shape. They are probably something like 30 to 40% of what ultimately we will have on paper before we go out to bid and permit for the project at the beginning of next year. Included in those packages are, we list 4 alternates. There's a cafeteria / commons, ceilings and lighting alternate, because that portion of the project was not in the original scope of work. There's also a roof replacement. All the roofs that are old on the buildings, we have requested that the estimating team budget what it would cost to replace those. Whether we do that or not, we'll decide later. But right now, we just felt it was important to find a number as to what they would cost if we were to replace the roofs that haven't already been replaced on Hindley and Holmes and Rock. We also have an alternate for the Holmes School, the Curtis property, which includes the parking lot and a service, an emergency lane that loops around the building on that side, and also acts as our construction access point. as well as the stormwater. And that's we're pulling that number off to the side so that we can see what the real number is for that. And then also Kevin Munrat has requested that some of the exterior windows and exterior doors that are failing, there aren't that many, but there are some on each of the buildings, and we're going to put a budget number to those as well, just so that we know what it costs. And so if we find when we're actually going out to bid on this project that there's money available, that these would be areas that we could potentially spend some of that money. So our schematic design estimate reconciliation, which is what's going to happen in 2 weeks once we receive the two estimates. The estimators will get together with the design professionals and we'll sit down, and we expect that those two numbers will be somewhat different. And we will look at line item by line item where the costs were, where the differences are, and have a discussion so that when we're ultimately coming back in front of all of you, that we feel comfortable and confident that the number that we have is as good and as accurate as can be at this level of design. In this next couple of weeks, we're also going to be working on exterior renderings. You've seen renderings and videos over the course of the project to date. We're going to be refining those over the next couple of weeks so that when we get back together and we start to present this to the larger community and town, that we have somewhat more detailed exterior renderings to share. The interior renderings will really be developed during the next phase. So at the end of design development, we will really get inside when we're looking at all the materials, interior finishes, etc. And we'll be sharing those interior renderings for the music spaces, the learning commons, etc. at that point. The schematic design review that we would like to have with this group we're suggesting having a meeting the week of 10/3, whether that's 10/4, 10/5, 10/6. That'll be something that we can all figure out what the best date is. But at that point, we will have had the reconciliation for the cost estimates done. We'll have these renderings done, and it'll be a good opportunity for us to get back together, look at the work that's been done, and confirm that everybody's on the same page. And if there's issues related to the cost estimates, that we can have that discussion at that point. Assuming that that meeting goes well, we would expect that we would be meeting the following week with the Board of Ed and giving a presentation to them related to the schematic design. And so right now that's proposed to be the week of 10/10, let's just say. The schematic design review will include the renderings, the cost estimates, the overview scope of the renovated spaces, the alternates that I mentioned and what the pricing is for those alternates, the refined courtyard landscape designs. I know that there's been some initial designs shared, but more refined designs will be developed over the course of the next few weeks. And we will also be able to give you an update on stormwater and post-road curb cut discussions that our civil engineers having with town and other agencies. So that should be able to happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The result of this is that hopefully at the end of that meeting, and you can tell us what the appropriate approval process is, but that the building committee would either recommend or approve KG&D and the design team to proceed with the design development phase. Assuming that the budget's where it needs to be and the design is something that everybody is aligned with, that at that point we would want your permission to proceed with design development and expedite this, because as we all know, this is a fairly truncated schedule and we need to jump into the next phase of design as quickly as possible to stay on the schedule that's been developed.
Oh, hey, Eric, just a quick question. The two items you mentioned, the drainage at Hinley and the curb cut at Holmes that the civil engineer is looking at, will those be part of what the estimators are the cost estimators are rolling into their numbers?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's information on the drawings right now. They'll be able to put together some budget numbers for that. And so, yes, we will have a line item that talks about those specific items.
Okay. Thanks.
Last month we had a meeting with Jeremy Ginsburg. We're planning to have a follow-up meeting with him the first week of October as well. We said that we would. We want to stand by our word, and that would also have a further discussion on the stormwater and curb cut at Hindley and what the findings are to date with some of the other agencies, as well as a little bit more of the refined development of the site improvements that Jeremy had and we had discussed with him, and he had some comments at that time. So all that should happen right at the beginning of October. So then we also, from a civil point of view, need to prep for the site plan submission to the town, and that's required to be in the town by 10/20, October 20th, if we're going to be in front of the town in late November. So they need to have about a 4-week lead time before we can see them. So that is the deadline that they've suggested, Jeremy Ginsburg suggested us submitting, so that we can be heard in November and probably a follow-up meeting in December. And his expectation is that we'd have an approval for site plan by the middle of January or end of January, following that schedule. So we mentioned the week of 10/10 having a Board of Ed schematic design presentation. There's also a submission to the ARC, Architectural Review Committee, which is required on 10/4, October 4th, and that meeting is on the 18th of October. So we'll be preparing the same work material that we're preparing right now, the renderings and things like that for the exterior, as well as some of the site features that we're preparing for you all to see. We're also preparing in light that we're going to be submitting to the ARC and reviewing the work with them. ARC, if you're not familiar, is really interested in the exterior of the buildings, not the interiors, not the plan layout. It's really the materials and finishes that we're proposing and where we're proposing the additions. On schematic design submission to OSCGR, to the state, we have, and you'll see in a minute from David, the overall schedule. It's set up to be sent up, the SD to be sent up by by October 17th. We may actually submit it before then. We'd like to get in front of the state in October and make sure that they understand the full scope of the work that we're proposing here in Darien. And then so finally, as I mentioned, we're submitting to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's due by the 20th. And the architecture that's been developed to date is pretty close to what would be submitted for that Planning and Zoning Commission. What really needs to be developed over the next 4 to 5 weeks before we submit is additional information from civil and landscape design, because the P&Z is really interested in the outside of the building and everything that's going on campus and the details associated with that. So Ty and Bond will have a considerable amount of work over the next 4 to 5 weeks to prepare to get that material ready for the submission to the town. That's my report. Anybody have any questions, feel free to speak up.
Thanks, Eric. That was super. That was really helpful. Do we have, I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, do we have time built in? So let's say the cost estimators come back, and whether it's inflation or otherwise, but what they've been looking at in terms of the conceptuals turns out that it's more than we thought it was going to cost. Do we have time built in there for either rethinking some of the scope or maybe going back to the revisiting the appropriations process,
So,
depending on
Chris,
what we
this is
think the
Dave.
right approach is.
Yeah, Chris, this is Dave. If I can chime in on this one, I did pause my webcam just because it was freezing everything up. But generally, what will happen is as we're conducting the estimate, as we're going along, we will identify things that that we see are potential value management items, so that when
Mm-hmm.
in the event that the estimate does come in over, now again within certain percentages, we'll generally say, you know what, we're over maybe 3 or 4%, but at this point, that's okay as far as at this early stage in the game, because you'll see there are certain percentages in there for, design contingency and escalation contingency. So if it's within, 3 or 4, I'm not sure, Eric, what your feeling is, but those parameters, we'll generally say, listen, there's no major value management effort that's needed at this time. Maybe we look at a couple other add alternates to have some control over scope, but we'll generally say, let's move this along. If it is something greater than that, then as we're doing that reconciliation effort, while we have both estimators together and the design team, we will start an intensive discussion on what are some opportunities for value management.
Right.
So that when we do come before you and the Board of Education, that we can really put forth a what we believe is a viable design that fits within the appropriated funds. And then obviously, as it's your building, so certain things on the value management list may be acceptable, but they may also be non-starters as they relate to the program and the goals of the project. So that we'll have to talk about those things together.
No, that's helpful. That's helpful to understand how that would work. That we're not going to just wait until the end and be like, "Ooh, gee, that's more than we thought." That it'll be sort of more of a progressive process.
Yep.
So.
I second what David just said. This whole reconciliation process gives us a great opportunity to talk about opportunities if we find that we're, as you said, 3, 4, 5% over budget. What other opportunities do we have to maybe pull portions of the project out and look at how to do them differently?
Okay. All right.
It's
Alan?
it's easier to, I'm sorry, Alan. It's easier to take out something like ceilings and lighting and doing them differently or doing them later than it is to reduce a whole addition that you're proposing or shrink classroom sizes, because once you do that, you can never go back. So we always look for opportunities where you can still do that same project, and you may have to do it differently.
Right.
Sorry,
Okay.
Alan.
No, you're okay. I just want, between yourself and Dave, just to keep on track with it, the meeting with the state, who is actually going to set that up? Because the earlier we tell them and try and get a date that works for us around a certain time frame, the more likely that's going to happen, within that time frame.
Yeah. So, Alan, what I had was I think it would be best if you and I get on the phone together and we try to get Michelle
That's fine.
on the phone, and just, again, just kind of say the hello again and just check on the grant application, because we really have not heard anything, and then talk with them about the fact that we do have to go in front of them for the prep meeting before our SDR. Now they may want to just combine those two meetings together, but I would say that within the next week we should place that call to them together, so we can coordinate our schedules. I think I'm actually going to be down in Darien on Friday, and then I'll be down again next week too. So if you want, I can come by your office, or we could just jump on a call together and coordinate our schedules.
Why don't we try and do it this Friday if we can, just to check it off?
Sure.
All right. Okay. So
we'll be in touch then, Dr. Adley, and we'll we'll make that call and just get on the books there. And there's no, just for the committee's information, there is nothing, the state cannot stop us from going from schematic design to design development. That's really the only time that their approval is needed for the next step is when we go through the PCR right before bidding. But before that, those steps are all we have to, more importantly, we have to make sure we're focused on getting the approvals of the building committee and the Board of Education to continue design. So that meeting with the state, if it happens right after we get approval from the building committee and the Board of Education, great. If it ends up lagging a couple weeks, that's really to no detriment to the project. It'll that may lag a little bit, and that's okay.
Good.
Any questions from the committee members for Eric before we move on to Dave and the scheduling matrix? All right, take it away, Dave.
So, okay, so I'm going to give it a shot here, trying to share from my iPad. So let's see. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you now see schedule on the screen?
We see a schedule on your screen. It's pretty small. I don't know if other
Well,
folks
good.
are.
Oh no, we do that on purpose so you can't critique any of the information on it.
All right, well, that's perfect then. Go ahead.
Yeah. Do you see it when I do zoom in on it?
Yeah, that's better.
There might be a little lag. Okay. All right. So what I wanted to do then is, Chris, as you had pointed out, I want to talk about the schedule tonight more so from the standpoint of explaining what is contained in here and how we use it as a tool. As far as the actual dates that are in here, they're the general trajectory, but we sent this out and we're working with Eric and his team on populating it. Eric gave us some good feedback a couple days ago, related to some actual dates. So we're going to work on updating it. So I don't want people to get caught up in the dates in here, but I want to just go over the structure. So just to start off, this is the schedule format that you're going to see from now all the way through the end of construction. And what we always like to do is start off the schedule with a listing of all of the milestones so that you as the client, or there's people that are going to live in this schedule every single day, like our project team and at times the design team. But for people like you who are touching it on a weekly or monthly basis, you want to be able to have a clear and concise spot where you can look at major milestones so that you can update people that you're reporting to. So this, we'll add and modify the milestones on here, but they identify some of the big things of, when our design phase is complete, when are major approvals happening, when are we, when are we targeting starting work on site. So those are all things that we're going to continue to track throughout the process. And they're fed by the information that follows it on the schedule. Just as we do talk about the schedule, we'll refer to activity ID. And what that is, that's this far left column here. We see it starts with 00001 or 014. That's essentially the number of that item. So they're all unique identifiers of the activity. So that's just how we identify it. The next one is a description of what the activity is. We try to be as specific as possible without having the explanations be too long-winded. This next column here, just basically where the zeros are, essentially says what's the duration of time, and that's measured as days. And then the next two columns are the start date and the finish date. You'll see some of them have only one date, and it's because of the type of milestone they are. And what you'll see is dates generally are represented by the day, the month, and then the year. And whenever you see something like this top one here that has an A next to it, that's an actualized date, meaning it's no longer being projected or calculated by the software. It's been input by us as an actual date that has come to fruition. Are there any questions so far?
No.
Okay, so then what we've done is at this point, the pre-construction part of the schedule is what's expanded, and the construction is not developed at this point because we really don't know enough detail. So as we go through here, we identify things of the different professional services contracts, our contract, the design team's contract, and again, we have to update all of these dates, but we basically go through all of the activities that are necessary. I'm going to move to the next page. So for instance, if we zero in on this section here, this is the schematic design section of the pre-construction schedule. So there are various activities that, again, just don't worry about the dates right now, but if we look at when we go halfway through here, we have this long bar that says schematic design documents with this finish date of September 12th. Again, that's right about the time we received them. So then if you look down those following items, it essentially shows the daisy chain of activities that has to happen after the design documents are done, meaning the estimate, reconciliation, and Eric talked through a lot of these items already, and as well as target dates. So that's how we're going to use the schedule, is to when we meet with you as the committee, we want to talk about where we are with our major milestones. We want to talk about major things that have been accomplished, and we also want to talk about what are the major upcoming things. What are the major decisions that the committee has to make? What are the major decisions or the major reviews that we need from town agencies? And really just use it as a communication tool to show where we are and to make sure that we're on track. One thing that you'll start to see as we go through too is generally the activity bars are green. Green means that it hasn't happened yet, and that it's a non-critical activity, meaning that activity does not, the way it stands right now, that activity does not affect the end date of the project. Whereas red activities are critical activities, and they are on what they call the critical path, meaning that's the longest path to get to the end point of the project. So obviously, whenever there's an activity that we're close to that is red, we want to give careful consideration to that and make sure that we are maintaining those dates so that we're keeping the project on track. And we also do analysis of the schedule for items that they may not be red yet, but they're very close to being red, so we stay on top of that. So again, we essentially go through this, we go through the different design phases, and then what we also have done is we've outlined a specific section that's just related to the state grant process, where we identify the various meetings that are required, and those are all triggered by the Building Committee and Board of Education reviews and approvals of the various designs, whether it's schematic, design development, or construction documents. And inevitably, the critical path runs through them because they are the ones at the end of the day that will allow us to bid the project. So that's where that lies. And then what we did was, while those design aspects are being tracked across all three projects simultaneously, when we get to the regulatory approval process, we've gone ahead and actually made dedicated regulatory approval processes for each of the three schools, because in our conversations with Jeremy Ginsburg and we feel that it's necessary to have that the individual approach there, because there may be times when one project falls a little further behind than the other ones because of for instance, if the Curtis property requires an additional meeting for the Holmes project, or if the Hinley storm work or the curb cut takes a little longer, we want to isolate Hinley and let Royal and Holmes go ahead. So while it looks like there's a lot of activities, they're the same activities, but they're for each of the 3 projects. So this is Hinley, and then we have the same criteria for Holmes, and then we also have the same criteria for Royal. Any questions on that so far?
So the dates, I'm sorry, just where you show a single date, that means it's just it's like it's a deadline when something is due, for
No.
example, in the.
So good question, Chris. Yep. So if you see on my screen there, we have, well, for instance, here, if we look at that RTM activity,
Right.
this is, the activity 3370, the reason why there is only one date is because you see to the right of the date, the symbol is a diamond.
Right.
That means it's a milestone, and a milestone has to be identified as either a start milestone or a finish milestone. So that was identified as a start milestone. So you can only have a start date on a start milestone.
And how are the task numbers assigned? Are they just random because they're not sequential?
They are completely random. I mean, there are some times where we will come up with some elaborate scheme of identifying, but it's when you're manipulating and adding activities, it gets a little burdensome to do that. So, we could easily find activities by the way that we organize them in the schedule. And there's background information here there's an organizational framework running in the background that groups these activities the way they are. I don't know if that answers your question, Chris.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I just wanted to see if there was some rhyme or reason to the numbering scheme.
No, none whatsoever.
Perfect.
And then when we get to the last section here is really the culmination of bidding and award, and we outline the process of finalizing the bidding documents, the actual bidding process, the scope review process, getting approvals, and then issuing first limited notice to proceed to the trades, and then actually executing contracts. And then, at this point, we have a single bar that's rolling up all of the construction into one long, I think it's 24 or 27 month duration. I think it was 24-month duration. So as we get further on in the design and we talk about phasing, then that's when we'll add that specificity, and we'll figure out how we're going to carve out the 24 months of construction into the detail. And that's probably a lot of information, but are there any questions that anyone has right now?
What is then do you send updates on this on a regular basis so people can kind of have it top of their inbox and see how the schedule is progressing as the time period moves along?
Yeah, so generally what we do is we provide a schedule update on a monthly basis throughout the project. And that's when we do our formal monthly report that has essentially, when you look at the AIA contract, and it talks about all of the items that we as the construction manager need to deliver on a monthly basis, we've come up with this monthly report that essentially checks all those boxes. And I don't know that binder that you received from the Oxbridge team, it may have had one of our sample monthly reports in it. If not, I can certainly share one of those with you, and you could see, this is one of many items that's in that report. There's financial information, there are progress photos, there's a narrative of any sort of cost or schedule impact items that we see. There are, logs with all of our potential changes and approved changes. There's all sorts of stuff like that.
But that type of reporting doesn't sound like it starts until we're a little further down the road,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there's a lot of pre-construction items in this schedule that it may be beneficial to the committee to use this as the vehicle for, keeping people up to date on, at each of our meetings, right?
And
literally put this up on the screen each time we meet and say, okay, here's where we are now, right? We're on schedule, we're not on schedule, we're ahead of schedule. Like Eric went through the goals for, for the design part of things for the next, month and a half or so. It would be good to kind of see how that tracks as we actually get into that. Are we hitting them or are we missing them?
Right. Yeah. And I would say, Chris, what we can do is we can look at, again, there are some times where there's no actual, well, there is progress, but there's no changing of dates over the course of maybe a couple of weeks. So from our one meeting a month to the second, there may be no change, but absolutely, I think a good practice is to talk about the schedule at each of our meetings and what's critical and what's needed next. So we'll be prepared. I'd say the goal for the O&GAP team along with the design team is to get the schedule updated with accurate dates, so that when we meet in person in 2 weeks, that we can issue an update and talk about it at the meeting, and those, I don't have to pay no attention to the dates on that schedule.
Right.
And then
Right.
going
Yeah, I mean,
forward,
once the dates are kind of plugged in and we think they're correct, is this the kind of thing that can be available as a link so that I could access it and check on some aspect of it, or is it I need to call you, you need to send me the most current version? How can this be? How, if at all, can this be made available as a tool to the committee?
yeah.
So,
So
I get a call, I don't know, I get a call or Jill gets a call from somebody in, Darien universe asking, where do we stand on this? One option is I call you and say, how are we doing on this? I call Eric, how are we doing on this? As versus I could, open this up and see fairly quickly.
yeah, I mean, what I would say is that, well, first of all, I can't. It would be nearly impossible to grant you access to this software because
Okay. All right.
it's licensed software that we have
Got
to
it.
we access it on a server, and it's really just a mountain of information in there that prints out these pretty reports. But that being said, again, we can, if we're exchanging this schedule on a every 2 or 4 week basis, the information on there is never going to be drastically off. So you're always going to have it as a reference point. And if something from one schedule issuance to another falls off track that much, rest assured you're going to know about it from
Right.
hearing from
Okay.
Eric or I directly anyways. So you'll be informed if someone asks.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Does that work?
Yeah, no, that works. That works.
Okay.
Anybody else? I don't want to monopolize the conversation. Anybody else have questions for Dave or input on this? All right. Thanks, Dave. This is super helpful. I'm glad we're pulling this together.
Sure.
That was really it. I think our next meeting is the 28th. We are, I think we're scheduled to have that meeting in person. Let's see how things are going, and we can decide whether that's necessary or not.
Sure.
As you can tell from different backgrounds, people are in different places, and so the video thing seems to be working well and working pretty efficiently. I'd love to see you guys. I like getting together, but let's see if we have to do it or if we shift gears and go virtual or not. We don't have to make that decision this evening.
Chris
No,
and
we do.
Sarah, I have a question here.
Sure.
Since our cost estimates are coming back to us pretty much that day or the day before, and then we're going to be reconciling for a couple days, do we want to continue to hold that 28th date, or do we want to push it to the following week and have an in-person the following week?
Yeah, it may make sense to push it if we think we can do. I mean, the question about in person, Well, Sarah's going to weigh in on two things. One, procedurally, whether we can move meetings like that, and two, how hard it would be to find a place to actually convene.
So,
Conceptually, I have no objection to that because that may make sense, but I'll turn it over
And
to
right.
Sarah.
it could be Zoom too. I'm sorry.
So I think we would have to move to Zoom. The issue is that October is going to be an extremely difficult month and has been very difficult to find rooms and times and so forth. I think for the in-person meetings, the dates that were set up are the ones we need to stay for the in-person. It doesn't mean that we can't have a virtual meeting on a different date. If we need to move the meeting because we don't have the information that we need, for a few days, we can push it back a week. We can cancel this meeting. Is still known as a special meeting anyway. We can push it back to the beginning of October. That's not a problem. We just won't be able to have an in-person meeting, unfortunately, if that makes any sense,
So,
Eric.
so Sarah, which of the meetings has been established as the regular meeting? Is it the one that is
Second,
the beginning of? It's the
the
second one.
second meeting of the
The
month.
regular
Yep.
meeting. The other ones are
Mhm.
the special. Okay, all right. So
No.
so another,
Okay, so just to be clear, guys, the regular meeting just means the meeting has been set 30 days out. So meetings that are set now for October and so forth are considered what's called a regular meeting. All that means is internally that we can't change the agenda. That's it. We can move dates and it's not a problem. So if we need to move a meeting, Eric, not a problem.
I would just suggest maybe that first meeting in October, which I don't know the date, but it's around the 14th.
well,
Maybe, I'm sorry.
yeah, no, I was gonna say that the one issue is that if we don't do the 28th and we do that following Wednesday, that's a day that I'm not
Okay.
around.
Okay. The next meeting was set for the 12th, Eric,
So,
of October.
perfect. And Dave, we may decide on the 28th that we want to share stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, why don't we see
Yeah, I
how
mean
we're doing between now and then? Yeah.
yeah. I mean that's essentially the day the estimates are coming in, right? Or they're coming in on the 27th is when we're exchanging, I think. So yeah. All right. Well, I mean, we're gonna be talking plenty before then, Eric. I know. So we'll figure out if we're ready for the 28th or not.
Sounds good. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Then that's all I had. Anything from the committee members that folks want to raise? If not, can we get a motion to adjourn? Dave Kerwar moves. Can I get a second? There are seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Great. Eric, Dave, thank you so much. This was really, really helpful. We will stay in touch. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.